We have a continuity in monetary policy. We also have continuity in fiscal direction in terms of the same government will be inaugurated in May. What we're expecting in terms of signaling and policy direction to ensure that this economy drives and attracts those critical investments that can transform its economic space from those three issues you've raised?
Well, we've got continuity in terms of the people, the president, the central bank governor, but the same policies can't be carried on indefinitely. A government can't run a budget deficit of 5% of GDP, as the consolidated budget deficit is 4 or 5% of GDP, when the economy is only growing at 2. Because if you do run the budget deficit that big, your debt pile gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it's unaffordable. So that's not, so we can have the same people, but there has to be some shift on policy. So what I'd hope to see is that because the people have been here for a few years now, that the policies they began to do in 2016, 17, 18, finding all the companies that should be paying tax in Nigeria, making sure that they're on the register, getting the tax agents to go out and meet these companies and talk to them and find out when they can start paying taxes, that starts to deliver a result. So it's the policy staying stable is fine as long as it delivers the results which have been talked about for a good few years now already.
Diaspora investment is very important. India, China benefits from those huge diaspora investments. Nigeria needs to also step up its game in that regard. We have a diaspora commission in place. What would you be saying in the areas of mobilizing more diaspora investments, considering what we get every year now, over $20 billion from diaspora remittances?
Yeah, the remittances are a big deal. I think you're right that they're having locals who've moved abroad and bringing their money back in some way, their expertise back, adds value. But I think the strongest signal that I see in emerging and frontier markets is when domestic investors are reinvesting their cash. So the Ambani brothers in India in the 70s, that told you that something was going on in India. And I think Dangote and other people like him, he gets talked about a lot, but other people like him, are another sign of reinvestment by people who, maybe not the same guys, but they would have taken the money out of the country 30 years ago. So, you get any cash that comes should be good. Portfolio money coming in to cut the cost of your debt, good. Chinese setting up factories, good. And Nigerians investing, diaspora, all of these flows, all of this money coming in, especially when it brings expertise.
I think what we would like to see is a lot more intentionality like that, as you said. There's a lot of money out there with diasporans, but intentionality, vehicles through which this money can be invested easily, also improving the business climates, changing the narrative, right? You ask anybody in diaspora today about Nigeria, and typically people tend to be negative and bearish when they just look at the outlook. And as I said, one of the things that we've said is that the story is actually not that bad. You can actually look at this from another lens. So, we feel like in all of that, right, managing the optics, managing the narrative, being intentional around creating vehicles for these sorts of capital to be put to work is the approach.
Finally, what we're expecting from policymakers, fiscal and monetary, in terms of signaling. Signaling is very important to investors. We have a CBN governor that's continuing his term. You also have the president also been inaugurated and bringing his cabinet for the second term. What would you expect in the area of signaling and policy direction?
So I guess on the signaling side of things, it's fair to assume that this would be some continuity of what we've had from the prior administration, which is not, on top of that, we hold out a hope that by the time the cabinet list comes out, all right, and by the time we see the nitty-gritty practicality of what the current government wants to do in this second term, that in this place for continuity, there will be some injection of, sort of call it a new life of sorts, a different way to look at problems, and also at the same time a sort of a desire to make painful choices, painful decisions that ultimately in our view have long-term benefits.